The city never sleeps, and neither do its taxi drivers. For people like Arman, the streets are more than just roads. They are a way of life. Every day he picks up strangers, listens to their stories, and watches the world pass by from behind the wheel of his old yellow cab. Some days are slow, others are hectic, but no 2 days are ever the same. And on this particular evening, Arman had no idea that one small decision would change his life forever. It was just past midnight, and the air was thick with the usual city noises: honking cars, distant sirens, and the occasional shout from a street vendor packing up for the night. Arman had been driving for hours, waiting for one last passenger before calling it a night. He was exhausted, but he knew better than to turn down a fare. Rent was due in a few days, and every ride counted. As he rolled up to a dimly lit street corner, he saw a woman frantically waving him down. Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone, and even from a distance, Arman could tell something was wrong. He quickly pulled over and she practically stumbled into the back seat. Out of breath, her face pale with worry. "Please, take me to the city hospital," she gasped, barely able to get the words out. Arman didn't waste a second. He hit the gas, weaving through the late-night traffic with the urgency of someone who knew time was running out. The woman clutched her stomach, wincing in pain, her breathing shallow. "Are you okay, Mum?" he asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. She shook her head. "No, I need to get there fast. I don't have much time." That was all he needed to hear. Arman pushed the accelerator a little harder. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew the hospital was at least 20 minutes away, and every second mattered. As they sped through the city streets, the woman fumbled through her bag, then suddenly froze. Her expression changed from pain to panic. "Oh no, I forgot my wallet. I don't have any money on me." Arman could hear the shame in her voice. He knew that feeling all too well, the fear of being helpless, the weight of needing help but not wanting to ask for it. For a moment, he thought about his own struggles. Money was tight, bills were piling up, and skipping even one fare could mean less food on the table for his kids. But looking at the woman's desperate face in the mirror, he knew there was only one thing to do. "Don't worry about it," he said firmly. "Just hold on. I'll get you there." She looked at him, disbelief in her eyes. "But I can't. Ma'am, your health is more important right now. Just focus on getting to the hospital." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't say anything else. She simply nodded, clutching her stomach tighter as the cab raced through the streets. When they finally arrived at the hospital entrance, Arman jumped out and ran around to open the door for her. She stepped out shakily, looking at him with gratitude, and something else, something deeper, like she wanted to say more but didn't know how. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't forget this." Before he could respond, hospital staff rushed over, helping her inside, and just like that, she was gone. Arman stood there for a moment, watching as the automatic doors closed behind her. He felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that she had made it in time, but also a small pang of worry. Would she be okay? Would she even remember him? Sighing, he got back into his cab, rubbing his tired eyes. He had done what he could. Now, all he could do was hope for the best. Little did he know, the night wasn't over, and soon he would receive something unexpected, something that would make him believe that kindness never goes unnoticed. The next morning, Arman woke up, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle deep in his bones. His night had been longer than expected, and though he had helped a stranger in need, his mind kept circling back to the same worries. Rent, bills, fuel costs. He sighed as he pulled on his worn-out jacket, grabbed his keys, and stepped outside to begin another long day of driving through the endless city streets. As the day dragged on, he tried to push last night's encounter to the back of his mind. He had done a good deed, but good deeds didn't pay the bills. He hadn't told anyone about it, not even his wife, knowing she'd scold him for giving away a free ride when they could barely afford to keep the taxi running. The hours passed. Passengers came and went, and soon, evening crept in. Arman pulled over near a small tea stall for a break, sipping his chai slowly while staring at the busy road ahead. That was when his phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize. He hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello, is this?" "Arman, the taxi driver." A woman's voice came through, sounding familiar yet different. Calmer, steadier. "Yes, who's this?" There was a short pause. Then the voice softened. "You helped me last night. You took me to the hospital." Arman sat up straighter, suddenly alert. "Oh, ma'am, are you okay? What happened?" "I'm fine now, thanks to you. I had some complications, but I made it just in time. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have happened." Arman exhaled, relieved. "That's good to hear. I was worried." She laughed lightly, though there was emotion in her voice. "I owe you so much. I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't have to. I just did what anyone would do," he said, though deep down, he knew that wasn't entirely true. Not everyone would have ignored the unpaid fare. There was another pause before she spoke again, this time with quiet determination. "Please, can you meet me? I want to see you in person." Arman hesitated. He wasn't used to this. He helped people every day. But once they stepped out of his cab, they became nothing more than fleeting memories. This was different, but something in her tone told him this wasn't just about gratitude. It was something more. "All right," he finally said. "Where should I come?" She gave him the name of a small cafe near the hospital. Arman finished his tea, wiped his hands on his jeans, and got back into his cab, not knowing that this meeting would change everything. When he arrived, she was already waiting at a corner table, a warm smile on her face. Her color had returned, and she looked healthier than she had the night before. As he approached, she stood up and folded her hands together in gratitude. "I'm Meher," she introduced herself, "and I wanted to meet you because what you did for me wasn't small. It was life-changing." Arman felt a bit embarrassed by the attention. He waved off her words. "I just gave you a ride." "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "You gave me a chance. I was pregnant and there were complications. If I had been even 10 minutes late, I might have lost my baby." Arman's eyes widened. He had known it was urgent, but he hadn't realized just how much was at stake. A chill ran down his spine as he imagined what could have happened if he had refused her that ride. I don't know what to say," he admitted. Meher smiled. "You don't have to say anything, but I need you to accept something from me." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Arman's heart sank. He had seen this before. Passengers trying to pay back favors with money. As much as he needed it, something inside him refused to take it. "I can't," he said, shaking his head. "I didn't do it for this." Meher chuckled. "It's not what you think. Just open it." With hesitation, Arman picked up the envelope and slowly unfolded the paper inside. As his eyes scanned the words, he froze. It wasn't money. It was something much bigger. A job offer. Confused, he looked up at her. "What is this?" "My brother owns a private transport company," Meher explained. "He's always looking for good, honest drivers. I told him about you. This job pays more, and you won't have to work endless hours to make ends meet." Arman's heart pounded in his chest. He had spent years driving this old taxi, barely scraping by. The idea of stability, of not having to worry about every fare, seemed almost too good to be real. But why? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Meher reached across the table and placed a hand over his. Because kindness deserves to be repaid. For the first time in a long time, Arman felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. And as he sat there, staring at the letter in his hands, he realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could bring the biggest changes. Arman sat there, staring at the paper in his hands, unable to speak. A job like this could change everything. No more long nights worrying about whether he'd make enough to cover expenses. No more skipping meals just to save a little extra. He could finally give his wife and kids the life they deserved. But something deep inside him hesitated. I don't know what to say, he finally admitted. Meher smiled. Say yes. Arman exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. It's just, I've been a taxi driver my whole life. It's all I know. Meher nodded, understanding. I know change is scary, but sometimes life gives us a way out when we least expect it. You helped me without knowing who I was. Now, let me do the same for you. Arman glanced at the letter again. It wasn't just a job. It was a chance at stability, a way forward. He thought about his family, about the nights he came home too exhausted to even sit with his kids, about the times he had to borrow money just to fill his gas tank. Then he looked at Meher, at the kindness in her eyes, and realized something. This wasn't just luck. This was fate. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. Okay, I'll do it. Meher's face lit up with relief. You won't regret it. The next few days felt surreal. Arman met with Meher's brother, who welcomed him with open arms and offered him a position immediately. The pay was better, the hours were reasonable, and for the first time in years, Arman felt secure. On his first day, he wore a crisp uniform, stepping into a clean company car instead of his old battered taxi. He still drove the same streets, but now everything felt different. One evening, after finishing his shift, he stopped by his favorite tea stall, the same place he had been when Meher first called him. As he sipped his tea, he thought about how life could change in an instant. He had spent years believing he was just another taxi driver, invisible to the world, but one small act of kindness had led him to a new path, one he never saw coming. Just as he was lost in thought, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hope you're settling into the new job. Thank you again, Arman. My baby and I are safe because of you. Some kindness can never be repaid. But I hope this was a start. Stay well. Arman smiled, his chest tightening. With emotion, he put his phone away, took another sip of tea, and looked out at the bustling city around him. Life had a funny way of working out, and sometimes the best journeys weren't the ones you planned. They were the ones that found you when you least expected them.